All right, today we're going to talk about grammar. Isn't that what you always wanted to talk about on the bed vlog?
Always. Can't we talk about boobies instead?
Isn't there anything about grammar that you might find sexy?
Boobies.
The shout out is to the StoryWonk people.
Hi, StoryWonk people.
StoryWonk is Alastair, Stevens, and Lani Diane Rich.
StoryWonk.com or something like that.
Yes. And also they do podcasts on writing, and they do The Light Bulb, which is a podcast on pop culture. This week, the podcast was all about grammar.
Sweetie,
What?
is not bed a good place?
Well, it is a good place from which to watch movies or TV shows like Outlander, which brings up another point they had a big argument about, which was ending sentences in prepositions. And I don't mean ending sentences with the
I am
word
not
preposition.
sure about which you mean. What for?
I want for my writing on the walls at the museum to be accessible, so if I'm going to back myself into an archaic grammatical area to be correct, I won't write it casually. I'll just change the way I'm going to say it. But I had a story that I wrote in a voice of myself as a 10-year-old, a memoir, and someone in the writing class critiqued all the prepositions at the end of the sentences. And I said, I'm writing in the voice of a 10-year-old. This is my theory about prepositions at the end of sentences as far as grammar goes. It's from German. That's my theory. I've never researched this to know if it's true because I'm not a language scholar. But in German, I was fascinated with this when I studied it for 1 year. There's words like exit and entrance and exit on the freeway, and you actually take the verb apart and you put the preposition part of it at the end of the sentence. So you say, like, I exited, like, off or something, and that goes at the end of the sentence. And so since English is largely from German, my theory is that the preposition at the end of the sentence crept into the language through German. So let me see what else there was. I took notes on their podcast to see what things I thought were interesting.
You see, Sweetie has a master's, which means that she took notes in college.
Well, you might have some opinion on some of these things. Well, first of all...
I have a BS, which means I was good at BS in college, not notes.
Apparently, there has been some controversy over the Oxford comma. Some people had posts about it on Facebook the other day.
Hold on. Sweetie,
do you know what the Oxford comma is?
Sweetie, comma, is the Oxford comma, quote unquote, comma, different than the Strunk and White, comma, question mark?
The Oxford comma is when, in a list, if you put a comma with the last thing, as in before the and, that is the Oxford comma.
Excuse me, comma, Sweetie.
Yes.
Period. That was Sweetie boasting. Exclamation mark. Sweetie, comma, you can go on now.
Okay.
Period.
No, I think that was an M dash. I believe that we were taught to use the Oxford comma. And I had a disagreement with the director of the museum in the 1990s, and I think he didn't use the Oxford comma, and he always got his way. And our PR director now, who does all our editing, takes out every comma. She won't put a comma anywhere.
Sweet.
Yes.
Run-on sentence. Insert this.
Alastair wants to always use the Oxford comma. Lani wants it to be optional, which is sort of what I was taught.
Close the parenthetical.
But I only wanted to point out one thing,
What, sweetie?
which seems to argue against it. But I always thought that what a comma meant was that you were replacing the and with a comma. So that if you had a list, instead of saying, I like bacon and eggs and cheese and bagels and coffee, that then every time you took out one of those ands in your list, you put in a comma. So that the last and didn't need a comma because you didn't take it out. That's all. I'm not saying I'm for or against it, but I'm just saying that it seems to me I remember that's what commas are for.
I think it should be clear that she is for or against many things, just
but
not
neutral
this.
on the Oxford comma. You'll cut that out, I know.
Wouldn't this podcast be going better if one of us were topless?
I was going to applaud you for leaving your shirt on, and then I realized that you just wanted to advertise yourself so that Lani and Alastair would see your website on your T-shirt.
I am not a poet.com.
I'm not a poet. They would appreciate that use of double negatives, the correct use of a double negative, because you are a poet.
I would wish that all my typos were correct.
You mean that as written, they would be correct? Or that they would be changed to the correct thing?
No, Microsoft Word can do that. That's not amazing. What would be amazing is just if I could just dynamically, on the fly, in every email with my typos and grammatical errors, just temporarily change the entire English language.